Hello, welcome to another data log. My name is Norik. Today we will begin the first of a long line of detailed looks into each variant of the Mjolnir powered assault armour and the exoskeletal prototypes that came before. In this log we will be covering the Mark 1, 2 and 3 exoskeleton prototypes, as really there isn't enough information to make videos on each individual one. At this point in time, the project was not known as Mjolnir, but was later included into the line as they were seen as technically important to the development of the Mjolnir project, and the Mark system was continued to separate future Mjolnir upgrades into budgetable steps. This was due to the extraordinary expense of Mjolnir. From the Mark IV onwards, each unit cost that comparable to a UNSC destroyer, becoming one of, if not the most expensive piece of military hardware the UNSC had ever produced. This is what made the UNSC need to create the Mark system so that they had more fundable yearly quotas. Before Dr. Halsey began Project Mjolnir, the Materials Group had been evaluating the combat potential of powered exoskeletons for at least 11 years, producing 3 distinct exoskeleton models, the Mark I, the Mark II, and the Mark III. When the Materials Group abandoned the exoskeleton project, Halsey intended for Mjolnir to be a single, continuously upgraded system, and wished to distance herself from the unsuccessful exoskeleton project that came before. Though Halsey disliked the system, she agreed to produce the Mjolnir armour in distinct stages, rather than through incremental improvements. The original version of Mjolnir was thus retroactively named the Mark IV, referencing the long-abandoned exoskeleton project that had preceded Mjolnir. Started sometime around 2500, the Mark I is one of ONI's first experiments with powered exoskeleton technology, previous projects not being catalogued. Unfortunately, due to technological difficulties and the use of large conventional pistons and motors, the Mark I was extremely bulky and was more of a human-operated powered defense structure resembling near to the sides of an early Cyclops design, rather than an armoured suit. It took 10 years to develop, appearing rather menacing, but ultimately a failure as it required being attached by a large cable to a power supply, limiting its movement and usefulness, requiring an enormous amount of energy to power the suit. The Mark I did increase the wearer's strength and stamina, giving them the ability to lift 2 tons and run at roughly 20 miles per hour for extended periods of time, although this wouldn't be of much use in battle, being attached to a power supply, hindering itself. The Mark I contained an incredibly sophisticated onboard computer, which was cutting edge for its time, and could assist the wearer by feeding battlefield data and communications to them via the standard neural implant, issued to all UNSC soldiers. Despite this, the exoskeleton could not carry an AI. The size of the platform meant that additional equipment could be attached to the chassis, including motion sensors, infrared scopes, and even can be mounted with a 30mm minigun that fired on self-targeted armatures. Now, unfortunately we don't have any information on what materials are used for the platform's armour. It is safe to say that it is coated in thick panels of titanium alloy similar to that found on the later Mjolnir armours, minus the refractive coating, as these were created long before humanity ever encountered plasma weaponry on grounded combat, which came with the arrival of the Covenant. It also did not have a flexible titanium alloy nanoweave bodysuit, as far as we know, though this was not much of an issue, as the size of the suit meant that practically all the joints were mechanical joints, and pistons instead of the wearer's body, meaning it could be exposed and still be able to take a decent amount of damage before failing. The Mark I's research and development was carried out at Section 3's headquarters inside Castle Base on the UNSC's planet Reach, though final assembly of the platform's components was at the Damascus Materials Testing Facility on Chi-Seti 4. Roughly 40 of the Mark I exoskeleton suits were manufactured. Although the units never saw the battlefield, some were used for heavy lifting in cargo bays, and a majority were put to use in Reach's titanium mines. The remaining Mark I exoskeletons were used in the Spartan II program, equipped by trainers to protect themselves against the Spartans' newly acquired strength. This was proven necessary when 3 trainers were killed in hand-to-hand training against the Spartans. The Mark II exoskeleton platform was similar to the Mark I, but had a slimmer profile, allowing it increased mobility. Unfortunately, this was still useless, as the suit still required to be tethered to a mostly static fusion generator. So although it was the most powerful piece of military hardware of its time, it was still far from practical battlefield operations. The Mark II was the first to have its armour plating covered with a crystalline refractive coating to help disperse heat across the armour, rather than allowing the extreme heat to eat into the armour plating, causing major structural failure in the titanium alloy. The suit also equipped a much more improved reliable self-sealing system for repairing breaches in the armour while operating in a vacuum. But once again, the suit could not carry an AI. Introduced sometime between 2510 and 2515, the Mark III incorporated a much needed wireless power supply system, similar to that of the giant orbital defence platforms that defended the UNSC worlds of importance. The power could now be transmitted to the suit without requiring a heavy-duty power cable, linking the suit to the power source. This greatly increased the suit's capabilities, giving it the ability to actually use its manoeuvrability. Unfortunately, the newfound success was not to last. The design was rejected for two major reasons. One, being that although it wasn't restricted by cables, it still had a limited operation range, as it needed to stay in the vicinity of a very large immobile reactor. And the second reason being that if the reactor was destroyed, the suit would shut down and the pilot would become trapped in the giant metal suit, helpless against any attacks. Like the other two, as far as we know, this last prototype was incapable of carrying artificial intelligence. In the end, all three of the exoskeleton prototypes were all thrown off the production line by the lack of a mobile power supply that could be housed in the suit itself. Therefore, they were all supposedly impractical for the battlefield. Despite this, the Mark III exoskeleton would be looked at once again, and utilised as a base design bed for the Hluting Mark III Cyclops, which went to see various deployments and utilisation on the battlefield in the future Human Covenant War. Including the Mark I, II and III, the project spanned over 3 decades of development. Project Mjolnir encompassed more than just a suit of armour. It was a pioneering effort intended to shatter current technological barriers. In its final iteration, Mjolnir is a highly advanced suit capable of further enhancing the Spartan's physical performance, while also doubling as a platform capable of handling an artificial intelligence network. Now I want to give my opinion. Personally, I believe that they could have found a defensive role for the Mark III, utilising them to defend the ground-based power generators for the orbital defence platforms, or if the range enabled so, on board the stations themselves to defend against boarding parties. But it could have been seen as not worth the construction costs at the time due to the only threat of the UNSC were facing was human rebellions, rather than a full-scale war. I would love to hear your opinions on the prototypes, and if you think they could have had any other uses worthy of full-scale production, or at least minimal production. Thank you very much for watching. Remember, if you liked the video, please leave a like, and if you want to see more, remember to subscribe. Then click the bell icon to get a heads up on when new videos come out. I would also appreciate anyone who didn't enjoy the video to click unlike, and leave a helpful comment on what I did wrong and how I could improve. That is the end of the data log. Norik signing off.